I sat on a burning sand dune and watched a man turn dry desert air into a glass of ice-cold drinking water without a single cloud in the sky. It's the world's most valuable survival secret, hiding in plain sight, and it could solve the water crisis before this decade ends. Right now, in the heart of the Sahara, families are pulling thousands of liters of pure water out of thin air while you pour yours from a tap without a second thought. This isn't a magic trick or a sci-fi movie. It's ancient desert knowledge fused with a modern scientific breakthrough that almost nobody's talking about. If you believe water always comes from rivers, lakes, or rain, you've been lied to, and the desert is about to rewrite everything you know. For nearly 1 billion people, clean drinking water isn't a given. It's a daily life or death mission under a sun that shows zero mercy. Wells are collapsing, rivers vanished decades ago, and the land has turned into a graveyard of cracked earth and dried bones. Children in these regions have never seen a single drop of rainfall from the sky. Imagine your skin never knowing the feeling of a raindrop. Entire villages are emptying out, animals are dying mid-step, and governments have thrown billions into failed pipeline projects that the desert simply swallows. Yet somehow, certain communities never left. They're still there, thriving, growing food, and drinking water nobody can see or trace. The question that baffled researchers and aid organizations for years was brutally simple. What are these people drinking? Massive drilling rigs, foreign aid shipments, and high-tech desalination plants all crumbled against the raw power of the sand, but the locals never panicked. They were holding on to a secret so ancient and so effective that it made engineers feel like they'd been blind for a century. Instead of fighting the desert, these survivors partnered with it. They learned to squeeze water from a source most people don't even know exists. That source is the air itself. Even the driest desert air carries invisible moisture, just waiting to be captured by someone who knows the trick. On the coastline of the Atacama, the single driest place on Earth, a ghostly white structure rises every foggy morning and does the impossible. Enormous mesh nets, stretching taller than houses, stand silently in the mist. They don't hunt fish or birds. They harvest water straight from passing clouds. Fog droplets collide with the mesh, merge into heavier drops, and trickle down into simple gutters that channel fresh water directly to storage tanks. This low-tech fog harvesting system produces up to thousands of liters daily in places where rainfall hasn't been measured in a decade or more. No electricity, no fuel, no expensive membranes, just physics, patience, and a piece of netting that turns a barren hillside into a water factory. But the fog net is only the tip of the survival iceberg. There's a far older and almost unbelievable method carved into the desert thousands of years ago. Ancient Persian engineers built colossal structures that literally pulled water from thin air without a single moving part, motor, or worker. These mysterious air wells look like forgotten temples or overturned stone domes, but they were actually life support machines for entire civilizations. At night, desert temperatures plummet, the thick stone walls radiate intense cold, and water vapor from the air condenses on the surface just like sweat on a cold glass bottle. The droplets run down hidden internal channels and collect in underground cisterns, safe from evaporation, delivering chilled, mineral-rich water year after year. This technique allowed advanced Persian and Middle Eastern societies to bloom in some of the harshest, driest landscapes on the planet, and then the knowledge almost vanished. Centuries of war and colonization buried the design until modern desert survivors in the Sahara revived a raw, portable version using nothing but salt. Here's the wild part. Spreading ordinary rock salt on a black tarp at night can pull so much moisture from the air that by sunrise you have a salty slush ready to be transformed into pure water. Salt is hygroscopic. It naturally absorbs atmospheric humidity, even when the air feels bone dry to your skin, acting like a silent moisture magnet while the world sleeps. Once the sun hits that salt-soaked tarp, the trapped water evaporates, rises as steam, hits a transparent cover, condenses, and slides down into a clean collection container. This ancient solar still technique, using a sheet, a pot, and a handful of salt, creates life-saving distilled water with zero moving parts, and it costs next to nothing. But the real game-changer sweeping across the driest regions of Africa and the Middle East right now is a shiny metal box powered by nothing but sunlight. It's called an atmospheric water generator, and even at a humidity as low as 10%, it forces the air to surrender its hidden water using a compressor and cooling coils. Solar panels run the entire machine, so the harder and harsher the desert gets, the more free energy floods in to produce clean drinking water around the clock. One unit can output over 500 liters a day, enough to supply an entire village, a school, and a small farm without a single connection to a river or pipeline. And this isn't a laboratory dream. Truck convoys are deploying these generators right now across Morocco, Namibia, and the harshest reaches of the Arabian Peninsula. But there's a backyard adaptation that's so straightforward you can build it yourself this weekend with zero specialist tones or engineering degrees. Dig a shallow pit, place rocks or stones at the bottom, and let the cold of the desert night do the rest. Moisture condenses on the cooled stone surface by dawn. This miniature dew pond is the direct descendant of the massive Persian air wells, scaled down and democratized for anyone willing to try ancient physics in their own yard. The desert has been whispering this truth for millennia. Water is never completely absent. It's just hidden in the air, waiting for a cold surface to reveal it. Even nature's own creatures figured it out. The Namib desert beetle tilts its bumpy shell into the morning hog, and tiny droplets accumulate and roll straight into its mouth. Scientists have since copied that exact microscopic texture and created synthetic surfaces that harvest moisture from the air more efficiently than any previous human design. With these combined techniques, fog nets, solar stills, dew ponds, and atmospheric generators, arid regions are now doing something previously considered impossible, turning the desert green. As soon as a stable water source appears, soil springs back to life, crops push through the sand, trees return, and the local climate itself starts to shift and soften. We are now witnessing circular farms in the middle of the Sahara, irrigated entirely by water harvested from the air, growing tomatoes, beans, and sunflowers where nothing lived for centuries. This transformation is not just about agriculture, it's about human eyes regaining hope after generations of thirst, pain, and forced migration. When a woman no longer spends 6 hours a day walking under a killing sun to fetch dirty water, she builds a business, her children attend school, and an entire community rises. The so-called water crisis isn't a shortage of H2O on this planet, it's a shortage of the right affordable extraction knowledge, and that knowledge is now going viral. Every single cubic meter of hot Sahara air holds enough invisible vapor to fill multiple drinking glasses. We just need the will to catch it. Engineers now predict that capturing less than 1% of the moisture moving across the world's arid belts could permanently end water poverty for billions of people. This quiet, solar-powered revolution is already connecting once doomed villages to markets, fresh food, and the sound of laughter, replacing the silence of dried-up wells. Women who used to carry 40-kilo water jugs on their spines now stand upright, pain-free, and fill a cup from a tap right outside their front door. Children who were poisoned by contaminated well water are now drinking the purest H2O on Earth, literally distilled from the sky and untouched by the ground. The desert has shifted from being a death sentence to becoming the world's most brutal yet brilliant classroom on how to survive and thrive on almost nothing. Yet what's coming next is even more shocking. Scientists are currently perfecting a special paint that passively absorbs humidity and releases liquid water when the sun warms it. Imagine a whole house, a school, or an entire refugee camp painted with this material, silently producing drinking water off its walls while everyone sleeps or works inside. Prototypes are already delivering water in crisis zones, cutting dependence on fuel-guzzling tankers and turning baking hot shelters into self-sufficient water sources. So the next time you mindlessly pour a glass of water down the sink, remember that on the same planet, a fog net is dripping liquid life out of a cloudless sky. The ultimate lesson the desert teaches is brutal but beautiful. Scarcity is nothing but a failure of imagination. Abundance hides where nobody thought to look. But this story goes even deeper. There is a method so effective and so controversial that it was deliberately hidden from public view for decades. In some of the most remote deserts, water literally seeps out of solid rock at specific times of day, triggered by temperature swings that science is only now explaining. Local tribes call them breathing rocks, and cutting-edge researchers now call it cyclic adsorption. The old myths were never fairy tales, they were observation-based science. If a rock can breathe water, then what about an entire mountain optimized with cooling channels and condensation surfaces to become a permanent water factory? Pilot projects are already underway to engineer artificial dew mountains that mimic this geology, potentially unlocking millions of liters from the air without a single generator. Powerful interests are watching closely. When water falls freely from the sky without clouds, the old infrastructure monopolies lose their grip on humanity's most vital resource. You are witnessing the first wave of a silent revolution that will literally redraw the world's habitable map and shift economic power toward the arid nations. Desert people aren't just surviving anymore, they are showing the entire planet how to thrive when the old systems of river exploitation and bottled water empires finally collapse. That's why this ancient meets modern knowledge is spreading across social platforms, with DIY tutorials in dozens of languages, connecting isolated communities into a global movement. Some call it a gift from the ancestors, others call it the next trillion-dollar water tech industry, but for a kid who just tasted clean water for the first time, it's simply life itself. Yet the story is far from complete. Deep under the sand, a natural technology might already exist that could water the whole planet for free if we dare to listen and learn. The desert hides far more than anyone admits, and the next chapter belongs to those who are willing to look at empty air and see a river waiting to be born.
You might think you've heard the whole story,
But there's a buried chapter that changes everything we thought we knew about water on this planet. Old manuscripts found in a cave in the Sahara depict a device that looks suspiciously like a modern condensation tower drawn over 2,000 years ago. And if that device worked then, what else did the ancients know that we arrogantly dismissed as myth until the water ran out? The truth is, this isn't about one technology. It's about a complete mindset shift that turns the desert from an enemy into an ally. Every major continent holds a dry belt where these techniques could unlock more water than all current dams combined if we simply share the knowledge. From solar-powered harvesters in Yemen to hand-built dew ponds in Sudan, a quiet, leaderless movement is spreading faster than any government program. The air you're breathing right now carries water from a distant ocean or forest, and soon, pulling that water into your glass will be as normal as charging a phone. The desert has been holding this secret for 10,000 years, waiting for a generation hungry enough to stop digging and start looking up. So the only question that remains is this: now that you know the air is a river, what will you do with it?